Welcome to Longterm. I'm Ty King, and this is the podcast where we talk about all things in recovery. I think that everyone has something in one form or another that they need to recover from. If it's substance abuse or some sort of history or past or whatever the shadow is that sort of drags behind you that kind of reaches out and grabs your ankle and tries to keep you from moving forward into your future, right?
Yeah.
So we're still here at the Pathways Innovation. So this is part of that series where we're recording amazing podcasts with amazing hosts and guests. I mean, I'm not that amazing. I'm gonna tone that down. Amazing hosts. That's a little bit of a stretch. My job on this podcast is to be the dumbest person, where I'm just asking questions.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah.
We'll compete for that then.
Okay, great, awesome. This could be one for the ages. But I get amazing guests because I get to just snatch incredible people right out of the hallway, sit them down here in the chair. I know we've been talking about this for the past couple of days. We finally got a time to sit down.
I know,
so,
it's been great, yeah.
Yeah. So Josh, introduce yourself and tell us who you are.
So my name is Josh Foster. I guess from a business
Try
standpoint.
to talking to the mic or spin that microphone around towards you.
Yeah, let me do that.
There we go.
This better?
That's better. Much
Yeah,
better.
so my name is Josh Foster. What I do for work is I am the Director of Client Relations and Clinical Operations Specialist at Serenity Park Recovery Center, which is
Awesome.
located in Little Rock, Arkansas.
Right.
I'm a person in long-term recovery. This June, I will have 6 years free from drugs and alcohol.
Wow.
There are a couple other things I'm struggling with, but none of them substance use. I'm also on the planning committee of Pathways to Innovation Conference.
Okay, I didn't know you were part of the planning of this.
Yes.
Awesome. Very cool. Yeah, it's been a really different type of conference than what I've ever been to before, especially in the recovery realm anyway.
Yeah, no, me too. It's been great getting a lot of vendors and exhibitors together that are on like the cutting edge and the forefront of what it's going to look like in the future for behavioral health.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly right. And, for you to be out of Little Rock, obviously I'm out of Little Rock as well. And so we've never crossed paths up until this point.
Right, yeah.
It took Oklahoma City to bring us together.
It did, yeah.
Yeah. Well, congrats on the first year of this amazing event to be on the planning committee for it to work out so well. So what led into, so with Serenity Park and you're helping people overcome recovery, but you yourself have a journey that you went through to even get to that point, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yes, I spent the better part of 23 years in active addiction. It started when I was 15. The first time I really got drunk off alcohol, I was with some older kids. We went to the senior party that year. I was in 9th grade. Really the first time I remember making out with a girl there that was a senior. And so my brain, the way it worked is that, I've been an introvert my whole life.
Yeah.
I still struggle with that, but, for my calling, my purpose, I'm social. I have to be extroverted in helping people. So it's like a conflict I have. But yeah, so from the first time I got intoxicated, I came out of my shell. And alcohol really, it told me the lie that this is how I'm normal. So from that point on, I had to have a substance, whether it was alcohol, whether it was drugs at later times in my life. That's what I thought I had to be a normal person.
Yeah.
And then, 23 years of that, you've been through a marriage, torn up relationships, the trauma you put on your family, the legal issues. I've been arrested 11 times, so been to jail a few times here and there, lost jobs, lost careers, just a whole lot of wreckage in my past,
Yeah.
And then, at the time, didn't have insurance. I didn't know even what recovery looked like. I'd been to treatment once. It was basically to get out of going to jail. Some family hired an attorney, and they said, hey, if you do 30 days at treatment, you won't go to jail. So I did that. It lasted about a month, and then I was back drinking again. Yeah.
Because they're doing it just to check a box. They're like, if you do this one thing, then we'll do this for
Pretty
you.
much,
I'm
yeah.
like,
Just
cool.
never did it for myself.
Right.
There was a couple times I would try to get clean for a relationship or for my kids.
Yeah.
But never because I was really just tired of that life.
Yeah.
And that happened when I was 38 years old. Yeah.
Yeah, to have that motivator of like, okay, I want to change now, rather than I'm doing it for somebody else. It's an incredible difference maker.
I think what it was for me is, everybody talks about a rock bottom.
Yeah.
There was multiple times in my life where other people recognized I was at the bottom, but I did not until I finally hit a spot where I was like, okay, I can't do it on my own. I have to reach out for help. Because I was always, a little prideful, a little smart, so I always thought I could outthink it. the first time I went to treatment and they start telling you about the 12 steps to recovery, I always thought, well, I can do it in 3.
Yeah.
If it takes you 12 steps, I'll do it in 3 and
Okay.
I'll be on my way.
I'll show them. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, always trying to get the upper hand, always looking for a shortcut.
Yeah.
The magic thing, that's just how we are.
Skipping some essential time and resources and like obvious steps that you should be taking.
Yeah, it just goes hand in hand with addiction, right? Like, let's not deal with our trauma, let's just drink it away. Yeah. So always looking for the shortcut, and then being clean almost 6 years, man, I've done a lot of work on myself. I've been blessed where I work now. I'm surrounded by people in long-term recovery that are also clinicians and therapists, and I've got mentors in my life. So, what a lot of people don't do, and maybe that's why they don't have success, I don't know, what's worked for me this time is to actually take this time of being away from substance abuse and to start looking back at my past and realizing why I even got into that in the first place. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so I don't have an experience myself in going through recovery. My listeners know that because I've recounted that 100 times. But
right.
It's always been interesting thinking back to where I was before I started learning about people that go through recovery and like what substance abuse and issues like that are caused from and what they go through. And so my understanding, just as somebody who, my impressions were off of TV and movies and books or whatever, is that you go through your whatever 12-step program, 30 days. You're done. That's all it takes.
Yeah.
You just got to go through that little program.
Yeah, no, that's it. And I think, that's probably what I thought originally when I went through.
Yeah.
Go through 30 days, you learn that you have a physical allergy to alcohol, and you just don't need to take the first drink. Yeah. And I was so young, and like I said, I was doing it for the wrong reasons. So I never really went and delved into, well, why do I even need that first drink in the first place? Why do I need to put something in my body to feel normal? What am I hiding from? What am I running from? It's the old adage of, substance abuse disorder is the solution that you think you had turns into a problem. Yeah. And that's what it was. Everybody knows that, drugs and alcohol are just a Band-Aid. It's way more issues than that. Yeah.
Oh, for sure. And I think that's where all people kind of relate. That's what I've discovered on this journey of this podcast is that, it started off as being like, how can people, the average citizen or whatever, understand how they benefit when somebody goes through recovery? But it's turned into over time, with all these interviews we've gone through, it's like, oh, you know what? We've all had something that we come from before, so before the first use of alcohol or drugs or whatever, any kind of substance, like you had a life and something happened that led up to that decision, but everybody has dealt with something like that. And we can all kind of relate on having that shadow behind us.
Yeah, or a couple things, being an innovative conference that we had an actual session this morning from Gary Katz. He's a therapist in New York, and he was talking about ibogaine and the kind of steam that's building up behind that.
Yeah.
But he introduced me to something I'd never heard of, and it was called betrayal trauma. And he was talking about how a lot of times trauma doesn't manifest itself into memories that we have to deal with. It manifests itself into symptoms that we encounter. And so that really kind of sparked a light bulb in me to kind of start connecting some dots, because that's what it is. The traumatic experiences that we have when we're younger, the trauma that happens inside of us, it doesn't come out because our mind will block that from us, right? Like, I don't want to relive that. But then it symptomatically erupts in other ways. And, I'm glad you have this podcast because I feel blessed that I went through substance abuse.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people deal with addiction, but it's an addiction that's not as it doesn't make itself known quite like substance abuse. You can be addicted to sex, you can be addicted to pornography, you can be addicted to food, you can be addicted to your cell phone, you can be addicted to relationships. A lot of those don't often ruin your life the way substance abuse does. So a lot of times almost everybody struggles with addiction. It's just that it's not so prevalent that they actually have to deal with it. They can go their whole lives living in addiction and not even really realizing it.
And judging other people, be like, oh, you're an addict.
Right, yeah. Or I'm not as bad as that person.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah.
For sure. Well, now you're doing amazing things with Serenity Park. I get you confused with several other organizations because I look at your staff and I'm like, there's no way that they're that big. And my mind, for whatever reason, can't comprehend that.
Yeah.
And you guys have a lot of people on staff at Serenity.
Don't ask me for a number. I'm going to say it's probably about 20 to 25.
Yeah.
Cool thing about Serenity Park, and it's the cliche thing of, it's like a family there. It's family, but we really are. I believe 98% of our staff is in long-term recovery. From the director to the clinical director. I think we have a couple nurses, a couple business administrators that are not, but all of us are.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
And so for that peer support recovery, is that how important do you think that is when you're helping somebody else, that knowing that you've been through 20 something years of the same thing?
Yeah, well, I am also a certified peer recovery specialist. I've been through the advanced training, but not only that, not only just being certified, but having that lived experience, whether you went through the certification process or not, it makes it really helpful. I mean, our admissions team is in recovery. Our case manager's in recovery. Our director of nursing's in recovery. So what that means is that every level of care you're going to see when you come to Serenity Park, somebody knows what you're going through because they've been on the other end of that same phone. They've sat in that same chair. They've sat through the same groups. So we're able to relate to the struggles. We know like those first couple weeks are going to be terrible. We know that when you've been there for about 4 weeks and you think you've got it, you're ready to go home early, right? We know what it's like. We know what it's like the family says they miss you and they need you, or you come up with that excuse in your head of, I got to go take care of. That was my thing. I had to always take care of something that I was not taking care of in the first place.
Yeah.
But just the way the excuses and the rationale tries to pop up in your head.
Yes.
Just to get you back in that comfort zone. We become so comfortable in the chaos that trying to change is just so unfamiliar and it hurts.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I agree with that and can relate. I've learned about myself, the past few years where it's like, why is it whenever there's not a whole lot of chaos going on, I feel really uncomfortable? You know what I mean? And it's like, I grew up with an abusive father and all that stuff, you know what I mean? And somebody told me, they were like, you're great in a crisis, like you know how to help people, but whenever there's nothing going on, you don't know how to sit still or deal with yourself. And it's like, you're always trying to run to the rescue of someone. When that's not there, like you have nothing to sit there with except for you and your thoughts. And that's very, very uncomfortable.
Yeah, it is for a lot of people too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole self-sabotage thing.
Yeah.
That was a couple of times that I've relapsed with self-sabotage. I got a great job. I'm doing my thing at home. I'm being super dad. And then boom, everything's going too good. So I deserve a drink. Yeah.
Right.
And then one just turns into, like a year-long bender for me and waking up in jail and things. But yeah, it's just because of whatever we've been through, and it may not even be trauma. It could just be, the relationship we had with our parents. So when we're young, that's what we associate life and love and being seen as. Whether it's an unhealthy being seen or not, if we were seen in the light of, you're messing up, you're in trouble, you're not good enough, then that's what we'll seek until we deal with that. So even when we grow up and things start going well for us, it's unfamiliar. It's like, that's not what I'm used to. So let me create a little chaos, or let me go find some, because that feels normal to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, one thing I've noticed, because we just met since we've been here, but one thing I've known about you or learned about you is that you're very disciplined, right?
Yeah.
So you have very certain things you will allow yourself to have and not have yourself to have, just observing it. Like when it comes to the the food over there, when they serve that, you know what I mean? But also you're getting up at 6 a.m. in the morning to go to CrossFit. And then, obviously your physicality and it seems like you've got a real strong control and self-will.
Well, thank you. It is something I struggle with. I mean, I'm not perfect by any means.
Sure.
I do allow myself to sleep. I find a little balance in there. But yeah, I've always been big into philosophy. And then when I got clean, I went to a faith-based program. So then I delved into scripture and then have gotten back into philosophy since. And just all of the ones that make the most sense to me, like Stoicism is one I'm really into right now. Book of Five Rings, just the way the samurai carried themselves. And just something that's always rang true to me is being able to control yourself.
Yeah.
And, even going back to the Serenity Prayer, right? Being able to control what you can.
Yeah.
So the things that maybe I consume, the things that I do with my time, those are the few things that I can really control from a day-to-day basis most of the time.
Right.
Outside sources, not so much. So on the things that I feel like I can control on a regular basis, I try to be very disciplined in that. And I think for me personally in recovery, it's lent itself to not only staying clean and sober, but also developing myself, bettering myself as a father, a son, bettering myself for relationships that I'm in, just being a better person. It's all about self-control. It's one of the fruits of the Spirit in Scripture. It's one of the key fundamentals of most other philosophies, like Stoicism, Taoism as well, Buddhism. It's just learning that most things outside of you are going to create suffering, It's how you respond to them is the ultimate. Like those are the only two things you can control.
Right.
How you act and how you react.
Yeah.
I don't remember where I heard that. Most of the things you're going to hear me say, I've got from somewhere else. So I don't want anybody to think I'm up here thinking like I'm
You're a
rewriting
prophet.
a book or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
I've learned to just taking information. I've always been like that, and especially in recovery. I'll sit up late and just watch like Jordan Peterson videos.
Yeah.
I'm always trying to just find people that are smarter than me that can tell me how I can be better. And I just hope it kind of comes out in the way that I carry myself and the people I'm able to work with.
Yeah.
The two boys that I raise, and other relationships. I just try to carry myself as a good person. I like to think, and I heard this quote, so I'm not even going to pretend like it's mine, is try to become the person you wish you would have had when you were younger.
Yeah.
And so I take that to heart. Not to saying I was raised by terrible parents.
Sure.
I love my mom and my dad. They had their own issues. This is back in the 80s when you could Google how to be a parent or what was good. They were just winging it, just like most of us are. And so I just kind of think like, what type of person would I like to run into if I needed help?
Yeah.
And I just try to be that type of person.
Absolutely. It seems like you kind of take those quotes and you test them. You don't just take them for face value. You test them, see if it's true, and then if it applies, then you stick with it.
Yeah.
And to learn how to control yourself, I think that's a really hard skill to have and to learn, because it could be as simple as, once you've mastered yourself, right, you're able to, like in an addiction case, of course, you don't have to pick up the drug. You don't have to go after the drink. But and everybody else, like we were talking about, everybody's got some sort of addiction. So you can put your phone on Do Not Disturb.
Yeah.
You can stop looking at that political post. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to have that dessert that's in front of you, Yeah,
you definitely don't. Yeah, it's an ongoing process. But yeah, I do like quotes from people that are smarter than me, and I like quotes that make things so simple you can't argue with them.
Right.
I like things that you don't have to overthink, even though in my head most of the time I'm overthinking things. That's why I like the little simple quotes.
Yeah.
Because then as I'm overthinking, I'll just remember like, oh yeah, it's that simple.
Right.
Keep it simple, stupid. You know what I mean? Just keep it real simple. Just putting things into practice. Getting off of drugs and alcohol was a way, and I even present this to guys when I'm doing groups or one-on-ones.
Yeah.
Stop doing the thing that's making your life terrible, right? Because that's one thing you have control over.
Yeah.
And then once you stop doing the things that make your life terrible, is it going to be great, sunshine and rainbows? No, probably not.
Right.
But at least you're not doing anything to make it worse.
Yeah.
Then once you stop doing things to make it worse, you can start developing habits to make it better.
Yeah.
And then as you start to discipline yourself to help make your life better, then the outside things that come and go and rise and fall, they're not as we catastrophize things a lot.
Yeah.
And so just disciplining yourself is controlling your emotions. I don't know. I fell into it and it just resonated with me. And so I can't see another way of doing it at this point.
Right.
Yeah. And, getting off drugs and alcohol was a main one for me.
Yeah.
So once I got that, I went to a place that was 6 months long. So then all of a sudden I'm 6 months clean. Then all of a sudden I'm a year clean.
Yeah.
Also in the first 2.5 to 3 years, I didn't date anybody. So I was celibate.
Smart.
So I was practicing celibacy because I'd struggled with porn at one point in my life too, especially towards the end of my addiction. So then all of a sudden, and then the discipline just falls in line because there's a quote from the Book of Five Rings, like once you master one weapon, you can start to master them all because you've learned discipline in one aspect of your life.
Yeah.
You stop drinking and smoking weed and smoking meth. Then all of a sudden you stopped watching porn. And then all of a sudden everything else just becomes a little bit easier because you've conquered a couple of things. It's just keeping that momentum going. Just like when we're out there in addiction and things just get worse and worse and worse. Well, things can get better too, incrementally in the opposite direction if you keep a little momentum. And you can't imagine how good your life can be if you get off any addiction. because your brain just can't compute that. Like, would you have told me 6 years ago I'm on a planning committee
Right.
for the first ever Pathways to Innovation conference for behavioral
for
health?
behavioral health.
Yeah, not just substance abuse, but behavioral
Yeah.
health. And we've got, big players in the game that do EMRs and
I know it.
financials, and we got TPN, and they just made a big announcement of rolling out a brand new product here. And we're at the Omni Hotel, right across the street from where the Thunder played last night. I mean, this is, to imagine I would be here, I couldn't have. But this just, that's sort of the things that as you start making your life better, you never know what's going to happen.
Nope.
Just, you got to stop shutting the doors before they even become unlocked.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like you said, stop making your life worse.
Yeah,
you know
stop
what I mean?
making your life worse and see
those
what
habits
happens.
build up and more opportunities show themselves and people believing you more, believe it or not, when you're trustworthy.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just to share some personal stuff, I recently had to put my grandmother into memory care. She's almost 87, has dementia, and it really took its toll over the last month, just escalated. And, I've taken power of attorney, me and my sister, and all of a sudden I'm over her finances to take care of her. And I'm just so thankful I'm at a responsible place to be able to handle finances, to take care of someone who was always there for me. And so it's just been a blessing. I have to look at it like that and not get too sad, not get too down on the situation. I'm just very blessed that, that God has brought me to a place where I'm capable of taking care of a person that used to take care of me, and I'm responsible enough to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I always ask people on the show, with all your life experience and everything that you've learned and everything you've seen, I mean, obviously, 6 years clean now, and you're working at Serenity Park, and you've seen a lot of different types of recovery, and you've also seen the other side. And obviously putting this together, you did your research and homework on who should we bring to this conference? You know what I mean? Who's bringing innovative solutions to behavioral health to bring all this together? Well, what is your one long-term solution for people?
I don't know if this would apply, but I'll start with this. We have a motto at Serenity Park that me and a couple other guys started, which is do better. And I think that can run its course through so many avenues, whether it's people that provide service, just always doing better. Just remember, but man, that's a very tough question. I don't think I've ever thought about that. Because I would think it's something simple as just love yourself, but that's so cliche. Long-term solution is just to never give up. It took me 23 years to finally get it.
Yeah.
I had people in my life that didn't give up on me at the same time, which I'm blessed in that because I do work with people that have lost it all.
Yeah.
I was fortunate. I had family that still loved me through all of this. Man, I don't know if there's a long-term solution. Just remain kind, love people.
I mean, that's something you kind of have to carry for the rest of your life anyway, to remain growing and to improving yourself anyway. So yeah, that's definitely a long-term solution. Yeah.
It definitely is.
Well, there's so many people now that are, you 20 something years for you, but now there are kids that are using drugs for the very first time and dying and ODing the first time they use it because of the fentanyl issues that are happening right now. So they don't get 23 years.
There's people right now doing drugs that weren't even around when I was using.
Right, exactly.
They were talking about one the other day. I don't even remember what it's called. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, fentanyl is dangerous. I'm glad I got out of it before fentanyl hit the streets. I'd probably be dead too, the way I used to use. Yeah, just buy something from anybody. Didn't care who they were.
For sure.
Yeah. So yeah, it's definitely dangerous out there.
Awesome. Well, Josh, thank you so much for being a guest and for being willing to talk about your story and about Serenity Park. If somebody heard this and they're like, Serenity Park is something I really want to look into, how do they do that?
They can just give us a call, 501-229-6100. We also have a website, serenitypark.com. It'll show you our staff, little bios, pictures of the facility. But that'd be a great way to start.
Awesome. If somebody wants to follow you, are you online anywhere?
I am only online on Instagram.
Okay.
And I believe it's foster.josh_. I believe that's my handle, yeah. But yeah, no, gave up Facebook about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was another addiction that I had to give up.
Understood.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. Thank you, Josh. And thank you for
Thank you.
listening to this podcast. If you are listening on this on any of the podcast platforms, you can find the video version on YouTube and vice versa. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can absolutely subscribe and find us on all the podcast platforms from Apple, iHeart, Amazon. Whenever you hear an episode like this and you hear Josh's personal story and what Serenity Park is doing and what this behavioral health conference is doing, if you know anybody that could benefit off of knowing that knowledge and be like, I know exactly who this would help if they heard this, share this episode with them. That's the quickest way to help us grow this platform. It's also the quickest way for us to grow this community and provide more resources for the people who need it. Liking, sharing, commenting always helps, but share these episodes with people who need to hear the message. That's the most important part. So until next time, we'll see you in the next episode.